G'day, I'm Patrick. Welcome to the workshop. Today, we're going to be talking about making small timber parts. Essentially, I need to make some additional legs or feet for this dining table for a customer. The table had these little brass wheels on it, which the customer is not interested in keeping. They're cute enough, but we just need a stable little leg. So I need to use some Taz oak or whatever I have laying around. These timber legs are Taz oak under all this brown stain. And we'll make some small parts, make them all the same size. These aren't going to be turned. I'm going to do a little square feature that tapers. Take you through the process, use some different machines, show you how to make the patterns. All right, and then attach them onto the table. I need 4 little feet, and they need to start with square stock. I'm going to use this, whatever it was. Probably came out of a 190 by 45. Now it is, I just need to cut it into some 45 by 45 squares by about 50 mil long. And then go through all the shaping and figure out how to seat them perfectly onto these little tapered feet. These little tapered pieces start at about 35, 36 mil, and they're approximately 24 millimeters high. Each one is actually slightly different. So I need to bore, before I do any shaping, I need to bore a 35 mil hole in these little blocks, making sure it's dead in the center, and it needs to be deep enough to accept these little tapers. Now, I could cut these tapers down, but I think it's going to work quite nicely seating into a hole in here. I'll end up gluing it on with epoxy, so the epoxy will fill the voids. As long as I get a nice tight seal around the lip here, then this will be a nice strong little foot. There's not a lot of leverage force on it, so even if it gets knocked around, it's not going to come off. I'm going to use these Fisch Forstner bits. I've talked about these before, but they cut an incredibly clean hole. And as I'm going to be cutting into end grain on these blocks, it's going to help me to have a really nice sharp bit. I can start with this 32, share for the inside of my hole, and also slightly carve the outside of that taper to get a really nice snug fit. If I go to 35 straight away and make my holes too big, it's not going to be as strong of a join. I want wood on wood if I can. When you're drilling small pieces like this, especially when you've got a bunch of them. Now, I only have 4, so this isn't strictly necessary, but this is a really handy tip. Create some sort of saddle or jig that they sit in, that you can lift them in and out really easily, where they automatically go into the correct spot, so you don't need to remeasure every single time. I've placed a reference dot on one of these, and I've punched that with a little punch. You can see the little hole there, and that means I can seat this and create a jig around it on the drill press. What I'm going to do is bring the drill press down until the point is sitting in that divot that I created, and then I'm going to actually lock the drill press down so that it can't go up. On mine, the way I do that is by rotating this ring. That Forstner bit is locked in position. I'm not holding it. It's just going to stay there. Now I can clamp my jig pieces either side so that each small part that I'm making is in exactly the right position. So my jig is very simple. It's 2 pieces of ply. It's going to be clamped to the board, and I'll have some sort of reference that stops it from the side as well. One really important thing here is the dust has somewhere to go, so that I can, each time I push a new one in, it can push the dust back into that cavity. If you make an enclosed space, it's going to fill up with the sawdust, and each time you put a new block in, it's going to be in a different position. So the dust has to have some place to go, and in this case, it can go right through that end. All I need to do is blow it out. The last thing we need to do is just set the depth. So I'm going to mark the depth of cut on one of these blocks, hold it in the jig, and then bring down the Forstner bit and use your depth stop on your drill press to make sure it's going the correct depth. Okay, these little feet need to be made smaller, or the hole needs to be made bigger. We can easily add a little roundover or a chamfer on the inside of that. That'll help, but it won't be on the same angle as this. So ideally, if I could step this taper into a straight cylinder that was 32 mil, that would be perfect. I can use a pencil to draw the location on this taper that is 32 mil by just drawing the place where it won't go in any further. I'm going to try and use a trim router with a bearing and run the bearing on that line that I've created, running the whole way around the top. And this is an unusual job. This is just kind of showing you the process of, well, in this case, messing around with table legs. Okay, so that's slid down, not all the way to the bottom, but it means my diameter is at least correct. That means it's going to get a really good tight fit. I'm going to do that to all 4 legs and then just move that cut down using the circle that we've created. Now, this isn't perfect and it doesn't need to be. It just needs to have some timber on timber contact so that the glue will bond and it'll be a nice strong joint. That's it. The last little bit of that shoulder there, I'm just going to clean up with a chisel, make sure that the foot sits flush down onto this joint, and then we can get them to mate together. Okay, so this is my little foot. It's going to sit like that. This line here is the extent of that mortise in there, and that mortise is approximately that wide from the roundover to the roundover. So I need to make sure I don't cut into that. But I do want this thing to exhibit kind of a tapered shape like that on all 4 sides. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mark that point so I know not to cut into the mortise itself. And then I'm also going to mark the extent of the smallest part, where I want this roundover to end. So this square is set for mortise depth. I can mark that on all 4 of them. And I'll grab another square, and I can use this square to set how large I want the bottom of this. This is a decorative feature, so the decisions are arbitrary. There might be some sort of design rules you can follow, but I've made some spares. I'm going to do one of them first, see if I like it. If I do, I'm going to do the rest. But I am following a method, because if you do not follow a method, then you have no way of ending up in the same spot. So essentially what we want is this point here to taper down to there, and I'm going to try just doing that on the disc sander. So using those markings, I made a little template, drew it onto the foot, and then shaped that using the disc sander. But I just wasn't satisfied with the way it looked. The curves are too irregular, it looks uneven, and it's just not quite the right shape yet. This is why I made spares. So we're gonna add a larger roundover instead of this kind of 10 mil roundover. We'll add kind of more like a 19 mil roundover. And then I will use a dovetail bit or it's a type of chamfer bit on the router table to do those. And I think this will get us to a nicer spot. So here's our larger roundover. Ideally, a process like this would be done with a full stick, but I can still safely pass this over. I've got everything closed up. I'll just take it slow, it'll be fine. And then we can swap it out for this guy. And we can use that. This bit is just called a chamfering bit. It's a 30-degree chamfering bit. You can get them at different angles. This is the right angle for what I'm doing. The router table I use has a digital rise and fall. I've been using it for years. It's phenomenal. It's just so exact. It doesn't look like much. The newer models might look a little different, but I can just plug in any height that I need and it'll be there. Makes it really easy to do lots of routing work. Doing any kind of close-up routing like this with small parts obviously requires a pretty high degree of comfort and, I guess, familiarity with the router. I'm comfortable doing this because I've used this router a lot. If you are doing some sort of cut like this and it just does not feel good, then you need to find a better way of holding it so that it does feel good. You need to have no vibration, you'd want to be avoiding a bunch of tear out, and there are always other ways to hold a piece rather than using your fingers close to the router bit, but this is what I'm doing right now. Okay, so shaping of these things done, and I'm really happy with them. You could have done something similar, not angular, but you could have done a rounded object on the lathe. That's fine. My lathe is under a pile of stuff right now, so I wanted to do it with the tools that I'm fastest at, which is the router table and other bits and pieces. So just got to glue these on. I'm going to use Techniglue, epoxy. I'm going to basically put a bunch in the cup, squeeze it on there, and then clean out as much squeeze out as I can now because it's going to be really difficult to clean it out afterwards. We could also do some taping of the surfaces. The risk of an internal space like that, where you've got two parts that meet, is you'll just never get the tape out of there. It'll get glued in there and you'll always see a little blue line. So I'd rather just try and clean it out really well now, or just use it sparingly. Try not to get too much squeeze out. These things are a really nice, firm but not too firm fit. So bit of Techniglue, they'll be absolutely fine. I do want to align the flat faces with the planes of the rails of the table. So I need to take some care to do that, but otherwise just mix up some glue and chuck them on. Maybe put a clamp on there. I feel like I give some version of this spiel every video, but use different glues for different projects. PVA would not be a good choice for this particular glue up, even though it might work, because even though these are tight, they're a little bit gappy, and that means PVA doesn't really have any strength over gaps. You need something that fills gaps. So that leaves our options as Techniglue, which is a 2-part epoxy, or polyurethane. Polyurethane foams up and it's going to spill out of these holes and drip down the sides. I can mix up some Techniglue. It is a paste, so it will just stay put. There'll be less squeeze out and less mess. But there are lots of, well, those are the 3 main glues I use. Techniglue epoxy, Pure Bond polyurethane, and then Tight Bond or other PVAs. Techniglue is a 2-to-1 mixture. I measure it on a little scale. You could do it by eye, I'm sure. I just, I've got a scale, so why not? I never know exactly how much to do. All right, it needs to be very well mixed. If you have any unmixed epoxy, it will not set, it'll stay sticky, and it will make very weak joints and a mess, a whole mess to clean up. The other great thing about this stuff is it's got a really long open time, which means I can put these on and then I can figure out that alignment issue I was talking about, where I want the faces to all be facing the same way. So these little friends are on, glued. I managed to get no glue squeeze out just by being really careful with the amount that I put on. And I think once they're stained up and oiled, they're gonna look fantastic. They kind of look like a little strawberry. I hope you got something out of this. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll put out a new video every week with whatever's going on in my workshop at the time. I really enjoy making these, so let me know if there's anything that you would like me to show you, and I'll be happy to walk you through it. There will be links down below to any of the products I've used in this video, and until next week, keep making stuff.